My name is Claire Thompson, and for as long as I can remember, family has been both my biggest blessing and my greatest test of patience. I live in Austin, Texas, and my life has always been about routine, teaching third grade, coming home to my quiet little house, and tending my small garden in the evenings. I liked predictability. It gave me comfort, but nothing about life stays predictable forever. It all began one warm spring afternoon when my sister, Emily, called. Her voice had that tone, the one that meant she needed a favor. Emily was a single mother raising her 12-year-old son, Ethan. Her ex-husband had left years ago, and though she managed well, life often threw her challenges she couldn't face alone. "Claire, I have to go out of town for a few weeks," she said. "It's work-related, and I can't take Ethan with me. Could he stay with you?" I hesitated. It wasn't that I didn't love my nephew, I did. But I hadn't lived with a child in my house since, well, ever. My life was orderly, calm, quiet. Kids were energy, noise, motion, all things that made me slightly nervous. But when I heard Ethan in the background, saying, "Please, Aunt Claire. I promise I'll be good," I smiled despite myself. And so, I said yes. Ethan arrived 2 days later, suitcase in hand and excitement glowing in his eyes. He had grown taller since I last saw him, his sandy hair sticking out from under a baseball cap, his blue backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey, Aunt Claire," he said, grinning. "Hey there, kiddo," I replied, hugging him. That first evening, we sat together over dinner, spaghetti and garlic bread. Ethan chatted nonstop about his friends, school, and how he was learning to play guitar. I listened, surprised by how much he reminded me of Emily at that age, curious, sensitive, and kind. After dinner, as I washed dishes, he wandered into the living room and began strumming softly on his guitar. The melody was clumsy, but it was full of heart. I peeked in and smiled. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of laughter. Ethan was in the backyard, feeding the stray cat that sometimes visited my porch. "You gave her milk?" I asked, stepping outside. "She looked hungry," he said simply. Something about that small act touched me deeply. Ethan had this quiet empathy about him, the kind that didn't need to be taught. That day, we decided to bake cookies together. It turned into a small disaster: flour on the counter, chocolate chips on the floor, and Ethan accidentally turning the mixer on too high. We ended up laughing until our sides hurt. For the first time in years, my house felt alive. One evening, as we were watching a movie, Ethan turned serious. "Aunt Claire," he began softly, "can I tell you something?" "Of course." He hesitated, eyes flickering nervously. "It's kind of a wish I have. But I don't know if you'll think it's silly." "I won't," I assured him. "Go on." He took a deep breath. "I just wish people understood me more. Sometimes I feel like I'm different, and it makes me scared to be myself." I put my mug down and looked at him. "Different how?" He shrugged. "I don't always like what other boys like. I like music more than sports. I like helping mom cook. Sometimes people at school tease me for that. I just want someone to say it's okay to be me." My heart ached. Here was this kind, thoughtful boy, already doubting his right to simply exist as himself. I reached over and squeezed his hand. "Ethan," I said softly, "being different is what makes you special. You don't have to change for anyone. You're perfect as you are." He smiled faintly. "You really mean that?" "I do. That's a promise." From that day on, something changed between us. Ethan became more open. He told me about his dreams, how he wanted to write songs, to maybe one day perform them. I encouraged him to play more, to practice without fear. I even surprised him by taking him to a small local music shop. His eyes widened when he saw all the instruments. "Pick one thing," I said. "Consider it an early birthday gift." He stared at the shelves for a long moment before choosing a notebook. "Not a guitar?" I asked, surprised. He shook his head. "I want to write my own songs first. I'll play them later." That answer said everything about who he was: thoughtful, patient, and wise beyond his years. Over the next weeks, our evenings turned into music sessions. I'd cook dinner while Ethan sat nearby, scribbling lyrics or humming tunes. Sometimes he'd read me lines from his notebook. "Even when the world says no, I'll keep shining, I'll still grow." They were simple words, but they carried such emotion that I often found myself blinking back tears. Then came the night before Emily was due back. Ethan seemed quiet. He sat outside, staring at the stars. "Something wrong?" I asked, sitting beside him. He hesitated. Aunt Claire, remember my wish? Yes, I wished people would understand me. But this week, I realized something. It's not just people understanding me that matters. It's also me learning to trust that I'm worth understanding. I looked at him, amazed. That's a pretty big realization for someone your age. He smiled shyly. You helped me see that. When you said yes to me staying here, I didn't know it would change so much. But it did. The next morning, Emily arrived. Ethan ran to hug her, chattering about everything we'd done. She looked at me with grateful eyes. Thank you, Claire, she whispered. He seems lighter. He's incredible, I replied. He just needed someone to listen. Later that evening, after they'd left, I found his songwriting notebook on the kitchen table. Inside was a page titled My Wish. It read, greater than, I wished for someone to say it's okay to be me. Aunt Claire said yes, and now I believe it. I sat there for a long time, tears welling up, not from sadness but from pride. That small wish had become something bigger, a reminder that sometimes, all someone needs is a little acceptance and trust to find their own strength. And as I closed the notebook, I realized Ethan had changed me, too. He reminded me that love isn't about grand gestures, it's about saying yes when it matters most. Because sometimes, saying yes can change a life.